So in recent by-elections, the EFF managed to claim award from the governing ANC, that's in Pampierstad, in the Northern Cape's Phokwane Local Municipality. Also, an independent candidate in the Eastern Cape won a seat from the ANC in the town of Tarkastad, that's in the Enoch Mgijima Local Municipality, which many of us got to know around the time of that stadium controversy recently. Let's talk more about these results then and how we can look at them in the broader picture of elections in South Africa, especially as we prepare for the national polls in 2024. We're joined tonight by a data monitoring expert, Wayne Sussman, who tracks this sort of information. Wayne, good to have you with us in studio tonight. Your main takeaways from these by-election results?
It's a fascinating night of by-elections. We saw the ANC lose 2 wards, as you said in the introduction, one in the Northern Cape, one in the Eastern Cape. Let's first start with the Eastern Cape. The ANC had a very difficult elections in 2021. One of the provinces, one of the parts of the country who wouldn't have been concerned was the Eastern Cape and the Chris Hani district where this municipality, the Enoch Mgijima Municipality, forms part of. And here we see an independent candidate in the town of Tarkastad, the same town which gave South Africa Steve Biko, that was where he was born, produce a major upset. And what were the takeaways? How was this independent candidate able to do so? The ward and the town of Tarkastad, if you've had the privilege of being there between Cradock and Phokwane, is a very contained area, not so many people moving in and out of the area, and this independent candidate had name recognition, was able to build a brand for herself through her community activism, and she was able to beat the ANC in one of the ANC's heartlands. Then we move over to Phokwane Municipality, to Pampierstad. Let's remind the viewers, let's go a bit back. In late 2020, we had a rerun of the elections in Phokwane because the council had collapsed due to a lack of service delivery and poor and ANC infighting. And the EFF have tried so many times to beat the ANC in by-elections. They've got it right twice. How did they get it right this time? I think there was general exasperation in East Pampierstad, but also they picked a perfect candidate. The former ward councillor for this area, who was also the ANC mayor. This part of Pampierstad clearly backed this person, and they backed him in the by-election. And this is a very significant victory because not only did the EFF win a ward of the ANC, but they've lost their outright majority, and they could lose power now in Phokwane.
And these are very local by-elections, and when I mentioned that we're now in earnest beginning a countdown towards the 2024 general elections. How great of a measuring tool are by-election results and getting an idea, just a sense of where communities are electorally?
So look, we have very little polling in South Africa. We have social media where people can give their opinions. Yes, by-elections are taking a snapshot of a particular community, but it is what people are saying at a particular time. And I think these are good indicators. Also, turnout was quite high. Let's go to Phokwane, where they had 10 days of hell, 10 days of some of the worst flooding in the country's history. 32% of voters still showed up in a by-election there, in the western outer region by Buerta's Hill. That, to me, says that people are still motivated to vote. People still see that local government makes a difference in their lives, and these are important trends. Should the ANC be worried in the Eastern Cape? Certainly not. But are there lessons to be learned? Definitely.
So if people in KZN who've just survived the most horrific natural disaster in the country's history in decades are still going out, 32% turning up to vote in a by-election, the turnout is much higher in some of the other areas, I think in the mid to upper 60s. How is it that the by-elections are still able to attract such a crowd when nationally and in local government elections, 2021 has shown us we're seeing a decline in overall turnout?
It's a great question. I think we had record low turnouts, as you just said, in the local government elections in 2021. Again, as I mentioned, Phokwane, the voters in Pampierstad East, where this ward was, they knew that their vote made a difference as to whether the ANC, those who voted for the ANC, would want the ANC to continue to govern there. the other voters were excited by Olabacheng Tomori, the EFF candidate, and saw the opportunity to bring change to their council. That motivated them. The voters in Tarkastad said, here is an independent candidate who will do things differently than the political parties. The voters in eThekwini might have said that here is a situation where we can make sure that the new ward council do a better job, that local government has a real difference in our lives. And voters might have said, we're very disappointed with the political parties in 2021, but here our vote in this by-election makes a real difference. And
independent candidates. We talk a lot about independent candidates in South Africa and their role in the country's democratic future. We are even now working towards their inclusion at national competition as far as the elections are concerned. Do we have a clear enough sense of the feeling of South African voters about independence? Do they trust them beyond ward councillor level?
So again, we can take this week's by-elections and use that as an example. In Tarkastad, as you said, a person with high name recognition known in the area. It's easier to win a by-election than it is to win a ward as an independent in a local government election because it's very, very localized. So by that logic, it's going to be harder for independents to do well on a bigger stage. But don't count them out because we've just seen an independent win a by-election. We contrast that with eThekwini, where an independent candidate got 33%. Now, that's a very good showing. They came second. They beat the Democratic Alliance in this ward in eThekwini. However, that independent candidate actually represented the seat between 2016 and 2021. They lost it in 2021. So there's a mixed bag in the data, with a good example in Tarkastad and not a less good example in eThekwini.
And let's talk about the main political parties, right? Mainstream politics. How good are South African political parties at taking this data, these election outcomes, making sense of them, and applying that sense to future campaigns and their understanding of the different communities in the country?
Well, I think it's clear that voters are saying to the ANC, we do not want infighting. That's why I think was a key contributor to their loss in Phokwane. If I'm the Democratic Alliance, I look at the data, I look at the turnout in their strongholds. So yes, they held in a very, very important seat in the small town of Wolseley in the Western Cape, but one of the reasons why I think the majority is reduced is they are unable to energize their hardcore voters. With the EFF, you had a great result in Phokwane, but your results in the other by-elections are not as good. So there's a lot to learn about the data, there's a lot to learn about the voting districts, and there's some more great by-elections coming up in the coming weeks.
Wayne Sussman will have you in again to talk about those results once they're in. For now, thank you very much for being on News at Prime. Wayne Sussman is an elections and data monitoring expert talking to us about just the latest round of by-elections which have been taking place in parts of South Africa.